Hey everybody, welcome back to the Build Your Network podcast. This is another Freestyle Friday episode, and today's is a super practical episode. You've been featured now in Forbes and Yahoo Finance, ton of different news outlets and PR pieces. How do you get to that point? Because there's a lot of people who have shows, they're crushing in their business, and they're going like, how do I get traction in the press? How do I get started in that direction?
Yeah, so I remember one time I was getting pitched on this PR campaign. It was back when I first started my show, and a company was trying to charge me like 10 grand to do some PR for me. And I was like asking a mentor of mine, and he's like, hey, is this worth the money? Like 10 grand, but they'll get me in like Forbes or Entrepreneur or whatever. And he was like, well, you could do that, or you could just do cool things and you're going to get featured in press. And I was like,
do cool things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of changed my perspective on it. And that's, by the way, not to say that I haven't hired PR firms. When we started Guestio, I hired a PR firm because that's what they do for a living and they're good at it. And they constantly pitch you to media outlets anyway. Mm-hmm. So, but really like the big thing is that like you have to have an interesting thing. You have to have a unique story, something interesting that you've done, a cause that you're supporting. It has to be story worthy. Like think about, there's so much lack of self-awareness anymore where people just feel like they deserve things when they don't deserve them. It's like, look at everything that you've done, look at your story, look at what you've built so far, and ask yourself, if I were a reporter, a journalist, like a real reporter, not just like somebody who writes, PR newswire articles. Yeah. Would I find anything that I have here or that I've done interesting enough to write a piece on it? If the answer is no, then maybe go do some more interesting things first. Right. Like,
And on the flip side, you may be sitting there. We've sat across from people before where they're the opposite. And they're going like, I don't have anything newsworthy. I don't have a cool story. And then you're like, right. You were like a professional athlete, or you were this, or right. You were the top of this.
It's
class.
The angle. What's the angle?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, it's not like you have to have like ran an ultra marathon in 2 hours and broken world records. Like that's not what I mean. I just mean you have to have a unique angle, something that you're doing that's a little bit different that people go, oh, interesting. Right. Like it makes them kind of it piques their interest. Mm-hmm. And so like that's one way. The other way, the most successful feature I ever had was an article in Forbes. It got viewed like 250,000 times, and it put me on the same level as like Tom Bilyeu and Rachel Hollis and
Joe Rogan,
Gary Vaynerchuk and Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. It was like top 10 podcasts that will change your life. Forbes article, 250,000 views. The way that I got that article was I connected with the author of it on a podcast interview. Networking, relationship building with people in the industry who have the ability to write things up on you. The thing is, you can't just connect with them and then ask them to write a piece on you.
Right.
It's a real relationship.
Doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's
it's
worth
networking. It's a relationship. And then my trick is always asking for advice. The caveat to that is you have to be okay with the fact that they might just give you advice. And that's also totally fine. But sometimes they might offer to go, oh, well, I'll just write up an article for you. It sounds interesting anyway. That's a good angle. You know what I mean? So I've done that with a couple of different pieces that have been written on me where I'll just ask the author, like, hey, I'm trying to get a little bit more features and stuff like that with this kind of angle. Do you have any advice, or do you know anybody that might be willing to write something up? And then they'll just go, oh, I'll do that. That sounds interesting. I can write up an article. What else do you want in there? It gave me a great opportunity. A lot of those cases, like especially the ones that list podcasts, I gave them a couple of my friends' podcasts to include in the articles, and it allowed me to add value to friends of mine just by mentioning their name in that article. And now they get some extra press out of it. And then they go, oh, Travis is a cool guy. He gave me free press for doing nothing. So that's another thing. It's all about the relationships especially in that world. It's very much about the relationships from what I've seen. And then the last thing is spend some money, hire people who do this for a living, who have all the relationships. That's what a PR firm essentially is. They're literally just the connection point between you and the media. They know how to talk to the media. They know how to pitch the media. They have the relationships, the contacts, the people who write the articles, people that host the shows, people that are looking for certain segments on certain, looking for certain experts on certain angles and perspectives on this article that they're trying to write, and you're a good fit for it. Like that, the short answer is that if you for sure want to get featured,
go out and try to find a list and pitch. But like, I mean, when you start looking at a Forbes, you start looking at who do I pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I send this to? Is it the editor? Is it this person? Is it this? Like, you could send everybody an email and irritate everyone and get blocked from the Forbes email list,
Mm-hmm.
and pitching is a viable option. Like, there are opportunities you can do that, but yeah, paying an agency that already has the contacts is going to make your life so much easier. And it's not that expensive to,
or even hiring somebody on your in-house team whose job it is solely to pitch outlets. There's a great book called Free PR. I think it was Cameron Herold who wrote that. The founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I think that's his book. Maybe it was somebody else. But yeah, they're writing about how to go get free PR. So it's a really great book, really great resource that will teach you how to go get some more PR and hire somebody on your team to kind of do that for you. But then we also have contact with Jen Gottlieb and Chris Winfield, who are good friends of ours. And I know that they're running a boot camp or a challenge or something like that, right? On
Beyond TV boot camp.
Yeah, Beyond TV boot camp. Yeah. So the main thing to keep in mind about press is most often it's not going to bring you traffic. That's why I always recommend podcast tours over press tours, because podcast tours bring you traffic and credibility, whereas press tours normally just bring you credibility. Yeah. They bring you a high amount of credibility. I'm not saying don't do them or to avoid them. In fact, I would encourage you to do them. But just understand that like this isn't going to be the thing. This probably is not going to be the thing that makes you viral and makes you $1 million. Yeah. But if somebody comes to your website and then they go to your competitor's website, and your website has a section that says as seen in, and there's an NBC logo, and there's a Forbes logo, and there's an Inc. logo, and there's an Entrepreneur logo, and there's a TechCrunch logo, and your competitor's website doesn't have any of that, which one is that person going to consciously or subconsciously trust more? The one with all the logos. Why? Because those are all names and brands that they recognize. They know, they like, they trust them. And so they're going to automatically assign a lot of that to you, which is, again, the same reason that I encourage people to do the podcast tours and to get good guests on their shows or in their platforms. Yeah,
it's such a funny thing. Like if you post a clip of you talking about something, on whatever, and then, we take you saying the same thing, but it's a screen grab from you saying it on an NBC station. People in their mind just automatically listen a little bit more. And even if they already know you, they're seeing you make this statement of like, oh, he's on TV, like he's legit. It's just funny how people think, because you get way more views and stuff on YouTube or on a podcast.
Yep.
But people still think of like NBC, CNN, like those are the arbiters of like information. So if you can break into that, that's huge.
Value is perception.
Right.
And all getting in press does is increase people's perception of who you are and who you say you are. You're not going to say a bunch of negative things about you on your website, right? You're only going to say positive things, but that's so does everybody else.
I should stop saying negative things about myself.
You should only say negative things about yourself. But you know what I mean? Like, people don't view your website as a source of truth is my point.
Yeah.
Because you can say whatever you want on your website, and so can your competitor. And if they look at both your websites, they're probably going to both say a lot of the same stuff. We're the best at this. We're number one. We do this better than anybody else. Blah, blah, blah. It's all the same. But if you have somebody that has, in that person's eyes, validated that you are speaking truth, or that you at least believe you're speaking truth when you're saying all of these things, then they're going to assign a lot more of that trust to you. And so getting in press, in my opinion, is not really an option. You got to do it. If you want to build a brand, like a brand that means something to people, like we're not talking about one-off e-com stores that you can send a lot of traffic to during the holiday season and make a quick buck. Like we're talking about like long-term, long-lasting brands. You got to get featured in media. So there's not anybody I trust more to do that, to help you do that, than Jen and Chris.
Yeah. So definitely do cool stuff. You got to network with people, and then you always have the option to pay. But also, yeah, like you said, this boot camp right now, is the boot camp free?
I think it's $50. I think it's $50 or something like that. Yeah.
No, I definitely recommend the Be on TV Bootcamp.
I mean, it's free or it's $50 either way. It's totally.
Yeah. So I know it's very reasonably priced. There's a link in the show notes of this episode right at the very top where you can click and check that out. I've gone through it. It's super helpful. Like even if you're not trying to necessarily get on TV, like some of the advice around pitching and some of the mindset stuff that I know that Jen does in the first few days of it are really helpful. And so definitely check out that link, register for it. It's really cool. And they do a lot of cool prizes. Like I got the value back within the first day or two. And then I actually got my money back and then some through prizes just by participating in it. So like, it's a very cool system, very informative, and Chris and Jen are super entertaining and they keep the hype up throughout. So,
yeah. So do we have a URL for that?
Yeah, it's in the top of the show notes.
Oh, great. Cool.
I just said.
You guys are so good. So go to the show notes on this page, click the link, get registered for Chris and Jen's boot camp if you want to get featured in more press this year, which if you're listening to this, you should get featured in more press this year. And you should definitely want that for your business, for your success, for your credibility, and everything else that you got going on. So head over to the show notes, click that link, and join up with the Be on TV boot camp. Anything else?
That's it.
All right.
See you on TV.
Thanks a lot, guys. Catch you next time.